Thanks to a recent issue of Wikipedia's Signpost newsletter, I learned about a really interesting study on Wikipedia itself that I wanted to share with you. I often talk about social media networks and other websites that fail to moderate users, leading to a proliferation of sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, otherwise hateful content, or just misinformation. Reddit, for instance, has that upvote, downvote system that rewards edgy humor and the bland, toxic thoughts of the average 12-year-old, unless the subreddit is moderated by people who are really serious about doing their unpaid jobs. So it's interesting that while Reddit and Twitter and Facebook continue to circle the drain on their inevitable descent into the sewer, Wikipedia seems to have only gotten better over time. It's also, completely written by random internet users. So why does it not end up looking like, Nazi graffiti on a dive bar toilet stall? Back in March, one political scientist set out to answer that question. Well, no, he didn't. But, that's the question that was interesting to me. But he answered it anyway. As a political scientist, Sverrir Steinson wanted to challenge an existing political maxim that says that stable institutions only change dramatically due to external factors. He demonstrated that Wikipedia, by contrast, evolved over the years due almost entirely to internal change, namely users leaving because they didn't get their way. So first, let's talk about how Wikipedia works. You might know that any anonymous user can make an account and change an article, and that other users can then revert that change. But the way that Wikipedia prevents this from creating an eternal edit war on every controversial page is through the use of several dispute settlement mechanisms. First, there are three main rules that can narrow down which edit is the preferred one. For one, content can't be original research. It has to be supported by previous published research. It must be verifiable so that the readers can always check the source on everything. And it must be presented from a neutral point of view, which is going to be important later. If there's still a dispute, users can appeal to a larger group of editors to weigh in, or they can even escalate to a smaller group of elected administrators on the administrators notice board or arbitrators on the arbitration committee. Those higher level users can make more final decisions, and that's where we see positive change come about on Wikipedia. Steinson focuses on the neutral point of view rule because it's quite vague and it leads to the most disputes. It means representing fairly, proportionately, and as far as possible without editorial bias, all the significant views that have been published by reliable sources on a topic. But let's talk about homeopathy. Does neutral point of view mean saying that some people think that it's real medicine and other people don't? That is neutral, but it's also misleading because no serious researcher or doctor in the world thinks that homeopathy is real medicine. A more accurate statement would be homeopathy is pseudoscience, but advocates for homeopathy would naturally argue that that is not neutral. And by the way, the last time I mentioned homeopathy in a video, I got a few requests for an overview. So if you're wondering what the deal is with homeopathy, I made a whole video about it, and you can go pause this one and go watch that one right now if you'd like. It just so happens that the Homeopathy wiki page is one of 63 articles that Steinson reviewed due to their focus on pseudoscience, conspiracy theories, extremism, and fringe rhetoric in public discourse. He carefully examined the history of each article over time, and at the end of each year, he rated every article on how they approached the idea of neutrality when it came to fringe positions. Category 1 was fringe normalization. The fringe position/entity is normalized and legitimized. There is an absence of criticism. Number 2, teach the controversy. The fringe position entity is presented as a matter of active scientific or political dispute. A says X, B says Y. 3, false balance. The lead places emphasis on the expertise, credibility, evidence, and arguments of the anti-fringe side, e.g., some scientists say, some medical organizations say, but the pro-fringe side still gets space to rebut. Number 4, identification of the fringe view. The lead places emphasis on the legitimacy and the overwhelming numbers that compose the anti-fringe side, e.g. scientific consensus, the scientific community, but space is still given to the pro-fringe side. And finally, there's proactive fringe busting. Space is only given to the anti-fringe side whose position is stated as fact in Wikipedia's own voice. The evidence that supports the anti-fringe position is presented, whereas the flaws of the pro-fringe perspective are outlined. So here's an example of what happened to the Homeopathy page over time. It was created in 2001, and from then until 2006, it was described as a controversial system of alternative medicine, which Steinson categorizes as teach the controversy. In 2006, context was added to say that there was a lack of convincing scientific evidence supporting its efficacy. It's been regarded as pseudoscience, and in the words of a 1998 medical review, it is a placebo therapy at best and quackery at worst. That's false balance. Better, but not great. In 2013, it was changed to read, the scientific community regards homeopathy as a sham, and homeopathy is considered a pseudoscience. So close. They've identified the fringe view as fringe. But finally, in 2015, it was changed to read, homeopathy is a pseudoscience. Proactive fringe busting stated as fact in Wikipedia's own voice. There was a similar evolution for pages like vaccine hesitancy, conversion therapy, race and intelligence, and the lost cause of the Confederacy, the white supremacist myth that the Civil War wasn't really about slavery. To understand why this happened, Steinson looked at the editors who were making these edits. He categorized them as either pro-fringe or anti-fringe, and then he followed them to see what happened to them over time and if they continued to be active on the site long term. What he found was that in Wikipedia's earliest years, disputes between pro-fringe and anti-fringe users tended to go in favor of the anti-fringe. And that had a knock-on effect throughout time. Pro-fringe editors would get frustrated and either leave the site or get sanctioned and not be able to edit. And so over the years, this led to a power imbalance in favor of the anti-fringe editors who stuck around and then used that longer editing history to be elected to be admins. They were then able to institute new guidelines to do things like require better sources for topics like medicine, making a hierarchy of sources that further went against the pro-fringe camp. So again, he explains all of this in terms of political institutions, but I was interested first as a critical thinker who has supported fellow critical thinkers who have prioritized editing out pro-fringe content on Wikipedia since the early 2000s. And secondly, I'm interested in it as a case study on how other sites might go about stopping extremists from proliferating. The bad news is that in this case, the success is due to immediate early action that tilts things in favor of rationality. So it's probably too late for Reddit or Facebook or other existing sites to take advantage of this. It's certainly too late for Twitter. I mean, my God. But for other sites like Blue Sky and Mastodon and whatever comes next, they might be able to learn from this. It reminds me of this story from Michael B. Tager, originally posted on Twitter, where, ironically, he no longer posts because of the Nazis. I was at a shitty crust punk bar once getting an after-work beer. One of those shitholes where the bartenders clearly hate you. So the bartender and I were ignoring one another when someone sits next to me and he immediately says, "No, get out." And the dude next to me says, "Hey, I'm not doing anything. I'm a paying customer." And the bartender reaches under the counter for a bat or something and says, "Out, now." And the dude leaves kind of yelling, and he was dressed in a punk uniform, I noticed. Anyway, I asked what that was about, and the bartender was like, "You didn't see his vest, but it was all Nazi shit. Iron crosses and stuff. You get to recognize them." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he continues, "You have to nip it in the bud immediately. These guys come in and it's always a nice, polite one. And you serve them because you don't want to cause a scene. And then they become a regular. And after a while, they bring a friend. And that dude is cool too. And then they bring friends. And the friends bring friends. And they stop being cool. And then you realize, oh shit, this is a Nazi bar now. And it's too late because they're entrenched. And if you try to kick them out, they cause a problem. So you have to shut them down." So good on Wikipedia for kicking out the Nazis and the conspiracy theorists and the pseudoscientists and, shutting them down. Let's hope that future websites take note. No. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.